Late one evening, as the neon sign above Joanne's little Memphis cafe flickered its last welcome, a lone figure slipped through the door. He wore dark sunglasses despite the dim light, a leather jacket that had seen better days, and a quiet gravity in his step. Joanne, scrambling through her final tables before closing, barely noticed until he settled into the corner booth. He asked for only a ham sandwich and black coffee, paying in exact change. When he looked up, his eyes, shielded but curious, met hers. He spoke in a low, unhurried voice about life's simple kindnesses. As he stood to leave, weary but warm, Joanne half smiled and teased. "Don't forget my $30 tip, mister." He offered a slow grin in return, then vanished into the night. She brushed it off as a joke. Yet somehow, the cafe never felt the same again. Joanne's shift was winding down. At 10:45 p.m., the neon sign outside the Cypress Cafe flickered through rain-spattered windows, casting pale amber reflections across formica tables. The hum of the jukebox in the corner had long ago surrendered to silence, leaving only the clatter of dishes and the occasional hiss of the espresso machine. She moved between tables with deliberate calm, every step measured so as not to jostle the half-full mugs or spill the day's final orders. Her thoughts drifted to her sister, Marcy, in the hospital 2 miles away. Marcy, who still clutched a morphine drip like a lifeline. Tomorrow's wages would go toward mounting medical bills. Joanne's back ached, and there was a knot in her stomach that would not untie. But she would pretend, one more night, that everything was manageable. Then she caught sight of him, a lone figure in the corner booth, backlit by the cafe's dim foyer light. No flashy attire, no screaming entourage, just a man in a black leather jacket, dark sunglasses, and neatly combed hair heavy with a sheen of recent studio work. His posture was effortless, like a musician who understood rhythm the way other people understood breathing. Joanne approached with her pad. "Good evening, sir. We're just about to close. Can I get you anything else?" Her voice was polite, but her eyes flicked to the empty booth across from him, sensing something strange in the hush. He looked up, removing one hand from the table. His voice was low and familiar, yet she couldn't place it. "Just the sandwich you mentioned, and a cup of black coffee." "Thank you." She nodded and walked away, heart quickening to the pace of the espresso machine's final pulse. Someone else had ordered the turkey club, but she knew this man wanted something simpler. Maybe she misunderstood the menu. "Excuse me," she said, returning with his order. He looked up again, lifelike despite the shades. His gaze was steady, curious, and deeper than she expected. She set the sandwich and steaming coffee cup before him. "One roast beef on rye, with mustard, just like you said." He nodded. She hesitated. "I'm sorry if I got it wrong." He gave a quiet chuckle so soft it felt like a sudden breeze. "It's perfect." He raised his coffee cup in a silent toast. She turned to leave, then paused. Some impulse drove her back. Pulling on her long auburn hair, she ventured, I hope it wasn't any trouble." Her voice faltered. She had never been this tongue-tied before a customer, let alone one so enigmatic. He folded his hands on the table, lean knuckles showing beneath his jacket sleeves. "No trouble at all, Joanne." His voice had the warmth of a hymn, rich with a smooth baritone that stirred something in her chest. "Thank you for asking." Her breath caught. He knew her name. She had never given it. "Are you—" she began, then shut her mouth. 1,000 questions chased each other across her mind. Who was he? How did he know her name? Why did she feel safe in his presence, even as exhaustion and worry tugged at every corner of her heart? A sudden movement behind the counter drew her attention. One of her co-workers, Rick, gestured urgently. Joanne watched his mouth form silent words. That's him. That's really him. Elvis Presley. The truth hit her with the weight of a tidal wave, a superstar, unannounced, in her modest cafe. Her pulse thundered behind her temples. She steadied herself against the counter, daring herself to return. When she did, she found him watching a little girl at the next booth, her daughter finishing a bowl of soup. She'd been too shy to eat all evening, and when he caught her eye, he offered a small nod of encouragement. The child's face brightened, and Joanne realized, in that moment, that he noticed small souls, not just screaming fans. She cleared her throat. Excuse me, Mr. Presley. He turned, a small smile beneath those shades. Call me Elvis, he said simply. Elvis, she breathed, as if tasting the word for the first time. Her heart pounded. She swallowed. Elvis, when you're done, don't forget my $30 tip, okay? She offered a half smile, half grimace, as if she'd said something absurd. He stared at her for a beat, then his expression softened into genuine warmth. I'll see what I can do, he promised, voice smooth like silk. His words settled over her like rain on summer pavement, unexpected, cleansing, and entirely real. Then he returned his gaze to the little girl, leaving Joanne with a tremor of astonishment and hope. She stood behind the counter, watching this unguarded king of rock and roll treat her cafe like any other place, and felt the first spark of something new. Perhaps kindness could come as quietly as midnight coffee, served without fanfare, yet strong enough to change a life. Joanne barely slept that night. Her thoughts raced between disbelief and embarrassment. Had she really joked with Elvis Presley, the man she'd known only through screaming crowds and glossy magazine spreads, had quietly sat in her corner booth, drinking coffee and studying her tiny cafe as though it were the world's most intimate stage. Yet now, when she should have felt triumphant, she felt exposed, as though she'd confided too much in a figure so legendary he practically belonged to myth. Morning light found her behind the counter, apron tied, coffee pot dripping a steady rhythm, but her heart pounded like a snare drum. Rick hovered anxiously. He called, Joe, Rick whispered, eyes darting toward the door. A guy in a business suit dropped off this. He pressed an envelope into her hand, and it was impossibly thick, far heavier than a mere paycheck. Her trembling fingers tore the flap. Inside lay a crisp check, $3,000, beneath it. A single sheet of stationery bearing the stylized TCB logo. She unfolded the note with a mounting sense of unreality. Joanne, thank you for treating me like a man rather than a star. You reminded me there's more to life than spotlights and reluctant applause. I hope this helps you worry less about tomorrow's bills. Keep your kind heart open and let no one diminish your worth. Elvis. She blinked back tears as Rick stared with wide eyes. Joanne, that's insane. He half laughed, half hugged her. $3,000. Wow. Joanne pressed the note to her chest. Here was a man untouched by normal kindness, repaying hers with something that could save her sister's life. She needed to breathe, to think. Finally, she whispered, I have to do something. Right. That afternoon, the cafe's usual lunch rush stuttered to a halt when word spread. Elvis's ghost, no, his emissary, had just transformed Joanne's pay envelope. Customers gawked. Staff buzzed. But Joanne slipped into the back office, slipping the check into a lockbox on her desk. Then she pulled out her worn ledger and began to plan. First, the hospital. She phoned Marcy's social worker, arranging immediate payment to clear outstanding balances. For the first time in months, her sister would sleep without those worrisome drugs racing through her bloodstream. Second, rent. The landlord's threats would be silenced for another quarter. Third, a little something for herself, a heater for her drafty apartment, an overdue dental appointment, a handful of new shirts for work. She refused to change her entire life. Elvis's gift was not a surrender to charity, but a call to dignity. As she closed the ledger, a knock sounded. Rick peeked his head in, face solemn. "There's a man asking for you. Says he's from Presley's foundation." Her breath caught. "Let him in," she said. The man who entered wore a conservative gray suit, a discreet lapel pin identifying him as a representative of the TCB Charitable Trust. His smile was polite, professional, but his eyes held a trace of gratitude. "Joanne Matthews?" he asked, extending his hand. She stood. "That's me." "I'm Carl Dawson. I'm here on behalf of Mr. Presley's charitable foundation. He felt moved to direct additional support to you and your family. We'd like to discuss a long-term arrangement, employment at the foundation, where you can oversee community outreach. Your experience here, your compassion, made an impression." Joanne's heart fluttered. She stared at the check in her hand, then at Carl. "Why me?" she whispered. I'm just—" Carl shook his head. "Exactly. You're just a young woman doing her best. That's the kind of person he wants on his team. Elvis admires authenticity. He wants to help more people, like he helped you tonight." She sank into the director's chair behind her desk, overwhelmed. Thank you," she managed, voice thick. "I don't know what to say." "Don't say anything," Carl replied. "Just consider it. Foundation interviews next week. We'll cover your sister's care entirely and provide you with training and a small stipend until you're up to speed." Joanne placed a hand over her heart. "This will change everything for Marcy. Thank you. Thank him for me." Carl nodded. "I will. You've earned more than just a tip, Miss Matthews." That evening, Joanne left the cafe early. She carried Marcy's duffel bag and pushed her wheelchair into the waiting taxi. As they drove through Memphis's golden dusk, Joanne pressed the envelope of money and that simple, profound note into her sister's hands. Marcy looked up, cheeks flushed with pain and relief. "What's this?" she asked. "For you," Joanne said, her voice soft, amazed. "It's from someone who believed in me." Marcy unfolded the note. As she read, tears spilled. "He called you a man," she whispered. "A man who deserves more than magic. He deserves grace." Joanne nodded, blinking back her own tears. "He reminded me I am more than this tired cafe, more than these worries." The taxi turned onto the tree-lined boulevard toward the hospital. Joanne looked out at the neon signs, the gathering evening crowd, and felt for the first time in months a quiet current of hope. A star's quiet generosity had altered the course of her life, and, through her, the life of her sister. As they passed a street corner, Joanne's phone buzzed with a text. "Looking forward to seeing you at headquarters. Wear what makes you comfortable. Carl." She slipped the phone into her pocket, glancing at Marcy's sleeping face. Tomorrow would bring interviews and unfamiliar offices, but tonight, beneath the Memphis sky, Joanne felt a steady certainty. Kindness, once given, could return as a river of possibility. "Vidim Hrvavet, Hialatush at Hyde Shal Avta, Vid Shai Shavlam Shala Amvum Lai Hai, Yivtur Garadlai," a world broadened by one quiet moment with a man behind sunglasses who saw not a waitress, but a fellow human deserving of respect, compassion, and a second chance. Joanne barely registered the sunlight streaming through her apartment window when she awoke the following morning. The envelope on her bedside table had seemed so heavy as if the $3,000 check and executive stationery inside carried a weight not measured in paper and ink, but in hope and consequence. She set it aside for later, turning toward the small clock radio. A scratchy gospel hymn filled the room, a reminder that miracles sometimes arrived with simple notes. By mid-morning, the cafe felt different under her new resolve. She moved with purpose, greeting Rick and the other waitstaff with more warmth than she had felt in months. A subtle glow surrounded her. Staff whispered of the late check and wondered at her renewed vigor. But Joanne kept her eyes steady on customers, carrying plates, pouring coffee, her mind already 2 steps ahead. The hospital, the foundation interview, the next chapter of her life. At noon, she slipped away to the back office, closed the door, and sat at her desk, the envelope unopened at her elbow. She reached for it, hesitated, and instead pulled out a fresh sheet of notepaper and a well-worn pen. Ink flowed across the blank page as she wrote a letter to the TCB Charitable Trust, accepting their invitation to join the team. She described her passion for helping others, her experience caring for her sister, and her gratitude for Elvis's faith in her. With a shaky hand, she signed it. Joanne Matthews. She sealed the envelope and placed it in her purse. That afternoon, a knock at the back door startled her. She opened it to find Carl Dawson standing on the threshold, briefcase in hand, seriousness in his square shoulders. "Ms. Matthews?" he asked quietly. She nodded, swallowing. "That's me." He stepped in, closing the door. "Elvis asked me to deliver this. Consider it a welcome gift." He handed her another envelope, slightly thinner. Inside lay a handwritten letter in Elvis's flowing script. "Dear Joanne, I hope this finds you well. I've been thinking about our conversation, about seeing you simply and treating you honestly. That evening, you gave me more than a tip. You reminded me why we share kindness in the first place. I have arranged to cover your sister's entire medical care, including her upcoming surgery. No need to fret over the details. The hospital will be in touch. Use the rest to rebuild your life as you see fit. Then, when you're ready, call me. We'll figure out the rest together. Love, E." Joanne felt tears spring to her eyes. She read the note twice, then counted the small stack of checks within the envelope. Enough to lift the burden from her sister's hospital bedside, enough to secure her apartment rent for a year, and even enough to finally pay down that dentist bill. The gesture reached far beyond charity. It was Elvis offering to stand by her as she moved forward. I don't know what to say," she stammered, clutching the letter to her chest. Carl nodded. "He wants you to focus on your sister. He said he'll handle the rest." He lowered his voice. "He also asked me to confirm that you'll join the foundation staff. He believes you'll make a difference." Joanne closed her eyes, tears spilling freely. "Yes," she whispered. I will." True to his word, the hospital's social worker called before the next dawn, scheduling Marcy's surgery and confirming all associated costs. Within days, Marcy's condition stabilized. Joanne found time between shifts to escort her sister through physical therapy, accompany her to doctor's appointments, and even share small celebrations when pain eased and strength returned. In those quieter moments, Joanne reflected on Elvis's kindness. A man whose name was shouted by millions had truly listened to one weary waitress, understood her struggle, and committed his resources to ease her load. It was this lesson, compassion unannounced, generosity without expectation, that shaped her new path. By the end of the month, Joanne walked into the TCB Charitable Trust offices, nerves humming beneath her calm exterior. A modest suite above a nondescript storefront bore the trust's name in elegant script. Inside, a small team gathered around a conference table, filling the room with the soft click of pens and whisper of turning pages. Carl greeted her with a warm handshake and introduced her to staff members. Lorraine, who coordinated children's music programs. Marcus, who organized veteran outreach. And young Ellie, who managed administrative tasks. Together, they outlined Joanne's new role: community liaison, outreach coordinator, and an ambassador of empathy in neighborhoods often forgotten. Her first assignment was to visit a local shelter that trained homeless veterans in vocational skills. Joanne remembered Bobby, the street musician she'd once encountered, and how a single act of recognition had restored his dignity. She realized now that individuals, whether rock and roll legends or ordinary workers, could unlock hope in each other. That belief guided her as she stepped onto a bus bound for the shelter, carrying a folder of resources, a gentle smile, and a heart forged by grace. That evening, back at the cafe, now ever so slightly brighter in her memory, Joanne found Rick cleaning tables. He looked up in surprise. "Back so soon?" She placed a small envelope on the counter, her last paycheck from the cafe. "I'm moving on," she said. "Thank you for everything." Rick's jaw dropped. You're leaving?" She smiled, eyes shining. "I have work to do, helping in places that need kindness as much as I did. But I'll still stop by for coffee." Rick nodded slowly. "Well, that's fantastic. Good luck, Joanne." Moments later, she stepped outside into the warm Memphis night, inhaling deep the scents of magnolia and exhaust fumes, street lamps and distant laughter. In her hand, she held Elvis's letter, folded like a road map to something greater. She pressed it to her heart, closed her eyes, and whispered thanks to the man who had seen her not as a waitress in a sleepy cafe, but as a person worthy of dignity and hope. As she walked down the sidewalk, with purpose, unafraid, ready, she realized that life's richest music came not from stages or spotlights, but from the quiet harmonies of human compassion. And that melody would guide her every step. Joanne woke early that morning, before dawn's pale light crept through her curtains. Her mind wandered over the previous weeks, the hush of the cafe after her late shift, the soft beeping of hospital monitors as she held Marcy's hand, the gentle authority of the TCB offices welcoming her into a new role, and always the echo of Elvis's words, "Keep your kind heart open, and let no one diminish your worth." She dressed quickly, smoothing the creases in her blouse as though preparing for a ceremony. Today was different. She would speak before a gathering of veterans, donors, and community members at the very shelter where she'd once brought supplies. But beneath her nerves lay something sturdier, conviction born from genuine transformation. The community center gymnasium was modest, metal folding chairs arranged around a small dais, flags at each corner, banners reading "Hope Through Service" hanging from the rafters. Volunteers set out refreshments, lukewarm coffee, donut holes, bottled water. A gentle murmur ran through the room as attendees found seats. Some exchanged solemn hugs, others avoided eye contact. Backstage, Joanne's stomach fluttered. She touched the TCB badge pinned to her lapel, an unspoken link to Elvis's legacy. Lorraine, a steady presence from the office team, placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "They're ready for you," Lorraine whispered. "Remember, you're not alone up there." Joanne inhaled, drawing strength from the calm resolve in Lorraine's eyes. She stepped into the overhead fluorescent lights and approached the podium. On her right, a row of veterans in neatly pressed jackets sat quietly. On her left, Foundation leaders offered encouraging smiles. A hush fell as she lifted the microphone, leaning forward, clasping her hands. "Good morning," she said, voice warm but steady. I'm Joanne Matthews. A few months ago, I was a waitress in that small cafe, balancing work and caring for my sister. I never imagined I'd stand here as your coordinator, but then something remarkable happened. I met a man who reminded me what it means to be seen, really seen, as a human being deserving of respect and compassion. She paused, letting the silence settle. A veteran in the front row nodded, as though confirming each word. A single act of kindness changed my life, Joanne continued. He didn't know my name at first. He simply listened. He opened doors for my sister's treatment and lifted a burden I carried every day. And he invited me to join him in helping others. She spoke of Elvis Presley, not as an untouchable idol, but as a catalyst for her own journey, from exhaustion and doubt to confident purpose. As part of TCB's outreach, we're here today to offer support to veterans who've carried battles on foreign soil and in their hearts, she said, voice growing firm. We have housing assistance programs, job training partnerships, and counseling services designed by people who know what it's like to feel invisible. Because no one should fight alone, nor should they stand unheard. A ripple of applause followed. Joanne felt her pulse in her throat, but kept her gaze steady. She concluded, "Thank you for trusting me. I promise to continue listening, to continue seeing each of you as the individuals you are. Together, we can ensure that every person here finds not merely shelter or training, but community and dignity." She stepped back, and the room erupted into a standing ovation. Chairs scraped, hands pounded against wooden panels. Tears glistened in more than a few eyes. Joanne's heart swelled, not from pride, but from gratitude, that she could stand beside these heroes and offer genuine service. Afterwards, as the refreshments were dismantled and volunteers carried boxes of pamphlets and leftover snacks to waiting vans, a familiar silhouette hovered at the edge of the crowd. Joanne recognized the tilted fedora and dark shades. Discreetly, she crossed the gym floor and approached. He nodded once in greeting. "You did good," he said quietly. She blinked, emotion choking her voice. Thank you." He glanced around at the emptying chairs. They needed to hear a voice of truth. Yours was the right one. Her eyes brimmed. "I learned from the best," she whispered. He inclined his head. "I needed to hear it too." Then, stepping closer, he pressed something into her hand. She looked down to see a simple backstage pass on a lanyard, in faint script. Team TCB, Joanne Matthews. Below, a faded scrawl. "Never let that voice fade." Her breath caught. "I will." He gave a small, knowing smile. "Remember, sometimes the loudest applause is the silence of understanding. Keep going." Weeks turned to months. Under Joanne's guidance, the TCB Charitable Trust expanded its programs. Veteran job placement, youth mentorship, emergency relief. She listened in town halls, consulted with families, and navigated red tape on behalf of those in need. When doubt crept in, she fingered Elvis's note tucked in her wallet. "You reminded me why we share kindness in the first place." At home, Marcy recovered enough to attend a holiday gathering at the community center, smiles replacing hospital gowns. Joanne watched her sister laugh over coffee, her own heart full. One evening, Joanne visited the old corner booth at the cafe for a quick cup. The staff greeted her warmly as one of their own and a community leader. When her latte arrived, she spotted a folded piece of paper beneath the saucer. Unfolding it, she found a single phrase in elegant handwriting. "Proud of you, Joanne." E. She closed her eyes, letting the memory of that first tip swirl back. The shy, human moment that had set everything in motion. Rising from the booth, Joanne walked outside into the crisp Memphis night. Neon signs glowed down the street, witness to a city that could hide legends in plain sight. She glanced skyward, barely visible among the stars. "Thank you," she murmured. And as the night breeze stirred the magnolia branches overhead, Joanne carried on, her own voice alive with purpose, echoing the truth that had changed her world. Real kindness never fades, and a single act can resound across lifetimes.